Every NASCAR season, we have tons of predictions and who's going to make the playoffs, who's going to win the championship, who's going to do whatever else there is. But there's those who go into a season under the radar. They didn't have a great season the year before and are looking to bounce back. And today, that's what we're going to look at. 4 NASCAR drivers who will bounce back in 2023. Starting off, we're going to look at Alex Bowman. Bowman didn't have a great 2022 to say the least, especially for his standards that he had set in 2021. When you look back at 2021, Bowman had a career breakout. And while he didn't compete for a championship and really wasn't in that conversation much more than the wins he had, having multiple wins was a huge milestone. And heading into 2022, I think everybody was expecting Bowman to have a similar kind of jump up that he had the year before. But in 2022, he really didn't have that. Yes, he started well. The win at Las Vegas was a huge statement, and for many, they thought at that point they were off. But ultimately, that's not how it went. In the opening 16 races of last year, though, the team honestly was pretty good. He had that win I talked about, 3 top 5s, and 9 top 10s in those races, and a 12.1 average finish. They were a top 10, probably top 8 team at that point of the season, but ultimately they collapsed in the last 20 weeks of the year. 5 DNFs in the 15 races he managed to run, an average of 21.6 in those races, and he sat out 5 races due to a concussion suffered at Texas. And even in that one, it wasn't like he was setting the world on fire or was going to win. He had speed last year at 1.5 miles and road courses, and he competed for wins. He's going to need to rebound this year, though, in a big way, because his career depends on it. And I think that he has one ace in the hole that not many are looking at outside of probably myself and a couple others. And that is crew chief Blake Harris. Blake Harris comes over from Front Row Motorsports. And while that might not seem like a big deal right now, I think it's an honest-to-God upgrade over Greg Ives. In 2022 with Michael McDowell, Harris had in 36 races 2 top 5s and 12 top 10s and a 16.7 average with 67 laps led. A huge way of stepping up from what Michael McDowell usually does, and I think that step up can be also made with Bowman this year. Second up, we're going to go with the only driver team owner on the list, and that's Brad Keselowski in the 6 car. Let's be real, last season was derailed within the first 10 weeks of the year with this 100-point penalty from Atlanta. After that, the season was pretty much lost. He'd have to go for wins, and points were really not a subject of any kind of conversation with Brad Keselowski. And I think that had that penalty not happened, I don't think he makes the playoffs. I don't even think he's close. But I do think that team races differently and honestly probably smarter. Now, 2022 was his worst season since 2010. Last year, he had a top 5 and 6 top 10s with a 19.2 average. But that penalty really did kind of exacerbate the kinds of problems he was having last season. It wasn't necessarily a horrible year. Honestly, only a couple average finishing positions higher, and he's right up there with playoff guys. It was clear, though, to see in the final 10 races that he was starting to have a bit of a trajectory upwards. He had a top 5 and 3 top 10s, and he led 151 laps in that span as well. Not saying the world on fire, but it showed that the car's speed was being taken more advantage of, which they did have more speed than was shown, and I think a lot of that just had to do with not having the greatest luck. To me, his 2022 season was very similar to 2010 for him. It was a getting started year, a big step up or over, or whatever way you want to say it, to a brand new level of racing, and in this sense, he really just needed to get his footing. 2011, or what could be 2023, was the huge step up to become a true contender week in and week out, and then as we saw, 2012 was his championship run. I think a stronger start to this season will help erase a lot of the issues that this team had last year, and plus, before 2022, he had 5 straight years of 8th or higher in points, including 2 2017 and 2020 Final Four appearances. Next up is the guy we're all going to be talking about next year, the biggest driver story of 2023, and that is Kyle Busch in RCR's 8 car. This is the winningest active driver in NASCAR, moving from a franchise driver at one of the top teams to being the franchise driver at more of a B-level team. Busch has something to prove in 2023, which I think is insanely dangerous for the rest of the field, and the field should be on watch for Rowdy. You see, when Busch has something to prove, when Busch is pushed against a wall early on, he performs. How many times has he been caught up in a wreck or some kind of issue? The car, in his words, is killed early on, and then he drives it up to a top 5 or a top 3, or God help the rest of the field, he gets a win from it. We've seen it at Bristol before, we've seen it in other times, and this year, in my opinion, is the season-long version of that. A lot of people, at first, were really writing off Busch, and I have to think that kind of motivational material only is going to fester even longer in Busch's head and really motivate him this season. And 2023 for me has a lot of parallels for Busch to his 2008 season. In 2022 and 2007, he raced fairly well, only got one win, and was forced out by owners for their preferred driver. Richard Childress Racing overall has really wanted Busch. They pushed to have him and made room for him at the end. And with that, they also improved with the next-gen car, which is probably even better for Busch. The 8 team last year was honestly speed-wise one of the fastest out there, and with a motivated Kyle Busch, one not trying to overdrive the car like he did in much of 2022, he may be the most dangerous guy in the field. Plus, Tyler Reddick's 2022 season of 3 wins, 10 top 5s, and 15 top 10s is easily attainable, with Busch's bad year, quote-unquote, being a win, 8 top 5s, and 17 top 10s. Of all the drivers on this list, Busch is probably the one I'm highest on, the one I'm buying in the most on, and the one who I really think could win the championship more than anyone else on the list. Now, last but certainly not least is Kyle Larson in the number 5 car. To be honest, Kyle Larson in a lot of ways did not have a bad year in 2022 and kind of doesn't deserve to be on this list. But you see, he did something in 2021 that makes him be on this list, and that is rewriting the expectations for him. He had an amazing 2021 championship season, and while we all knew he wasn't going to replicate that, the 3 wins, 13 top 5s, and 19 top 10s last year and a 14.1 average was definitely not something we expected. And I think a lot of this was really blown up as well due to his uncharacteristic mistakes last year, especially with teammate Chase Elliott. For instance, at the Auto Club finish and the Watkins Glen finish, where Elliott, in both occasions, was on the raw end of the deal. 3 of his near career high 7 DNFs, though, were engine issues, which is something that can be fixed. Another one was a mechanical issue, for instance. At Indianapolis, it caused a crash. And these are things that could happen to anybody, and ultimately Larson got bit with the bug the hardest. But a 35th place run, for instance, to eliminate him at the Roval was just plain bad luck as well. And I think with a few runs going differently or more his way, or maybe a battle for the win goes his way a little more, or even just not being taken out at the worst possible time, and people view this season in a much different light and a much more positive light. While it may seem unjustified having him on here, his realignment of expectations due to 2021 has proven to show why he's such an elite and amazing driver. And I think that with year 2, with new cars being really good for HMS before, like 2008 and 2014, 2023 is being primed for him to have a bit of a comeback year. Now, with all that, I want to ask you what drivers you see having a bounce back 2023 season. Let me know down in the comments below, and while you're at it, leave a like on this video, share this video, and subscribe to my channel for more great NASCAR content. Thank you so much to my channel members for your continued support, and until next time, have a good one.